Much of Jeffrey Epstein's life was a mystery. Questions still surround how he went from a college dropout to a multimillionaire financier to a convicted paedophile, and facing charges of running a sex trafficking ring and coercing numerous underage girls to perform sex acts. He pleaded not guilty, and now many of those questions will never be answered. In the early hours of August 10th, 2019, Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell at New York's Metropolitan Correctional Center, where he was awaiting trial. Authorities called it an apparent suicide. The politically connected financier's death occurred a day after a court unsealed documents alleging new details of sexual abuse claims and associates. At the heart of the documents connected to a 2015 defamation case are allegations by a woman, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who claimed that Epstein kept her as a teenage sex slave. The accusation echoes similar allegations he had faced for more than a decade.
Epstein is charged in a 2-count indictment, sex trafficking of underage girls. Epstein is alleged to have abused dozens of victims.
So how did we get here? Epstein began his career as a high school math and physics teacher. After failing to finish college, he took a brief job at the prestigious Dalton School in Manhattan at the age of 21. From there, he shifted into the world of investment banking, joining Bear Stearns before moving on to start his own investment firm. But it wasn't until he befriended Leslie Wexner, billionaire and CEO of L Brands in the late 1980s, that his fortune really took off. Although how he got so rich is still very much unknown. There are no public records of his investments, and his clients, besides Wexner, are all a secret. What we do know is that by the 1990s, he had managed to accumulate several extravagant properties, including a multiple-story townhouse in Manhattan, a mansion in Palm Beach, a private estate in New Mexico, an apartment in Paris, and a private island in the Caribbean, according to court documents. Soon, he was rubbing shoulders with some of the world's wealthiest and most powerful people. It wasn't until 2005 that Epstein's lavish life took a turn. Around this time, he came under investigation by Palm Beach police after accusations surfaced from several underage girls accusing him of offering money for massages and sex acts. As part of a plea deal, Epstein eventually pleaded guilty in 2008 to state prostitution charges and served 13 months. He also registered as a sex offender and paid restitution to the victims identified by the FBI. This controversial agreement was brokered by then U.S. Attorney and now former United States Secretary of Labor, Alexander Acosta. It allowed him to avoid federal charges and a prison sentence.
I understand what the victims say, and I'm not here to try to say that I can stand in their shoes or that I can address their concerns. I'm here to say we did what we did because we wanted to see Epstein go to jail.
Epstein then remained largely out of the headlines until 2018, when the Miami Herald published an investigation which included interviews with more than 60 women who say they were abused by Epstein. That reporting raised more questions about his plea agreement and led the Justice Department to open an investigation into his case.
I am calling on the Department of Justice's Office of Professional Responsibility to make public the results of its review of Acosta's handling of the Epstein case.
In early July, Epstein was jailed after a federal indictment accused him of sex trafficking dozens of underage girls, some as young as 14 years old. He pleaded not guilty to the charges.
The alleged behavior shocks the conscience, and while the charged conduct is from a number of years ago, it is still profoundly important to the many alleged victims.
After his arrest, at least a dozen new victims came forward. On July 23, 2019, while awaiting trial, Epstein was found in his Manhattan jail cell with marks on his neck and placed on suicide watch. Less than a week later, Epstein was taken off suicide watch, according to a source familiar with the matter. The morning of August 10th, the Federal Bureau of Prisons announced Epstein's death, saying he had died of an apparent suicide.
To Bernie Sanders, Finland has long led the way.
I want to thank the Finnish people for giving us a vision and a model that we in this country can attain to as well.
Take healthcare. Having a baby in the United States, tweeted Senator Sanders recently, costs an average of $12,000, as opposed to just $60 in Finland.
We have a dysfunctional healthcare system.
But just how functional is Finland's healthcare? In March, the Finnish government fell, the second in a row to fail at reforming the country's unsustainable healthcare system.
Finns are getting less and less children. People are getting older. We need taxpayers. If we think of sustainability, either we have to get more people to Finland or we have to cut the cost.
But that's easier said than done. This northern sliver of Europe, a country with roughly the same population as Minnesota, has vast expanses of nothingness and no one, making its decentralized system expensive and increasingly unmanageable.
Normally what we show people is the sunny side of the street. The healthcare is on the dark side of the street, so we do have a problem.
But Sanders points to Finland's direct patient care results as evidence that the system is working, despite needing improvement. On key health indicators like infant mortality, for instance, Finland has a lower rate than the US. According to the UN, when it comes to under fives, Finland has 2.3 deaths per 1,000 live births, while the US has nearly 3 times that, with 6.6. And access to good healthcare makes people happy, tweeted Sanders, linking to a Finnish journalist who agrees that Finns are happy to pay high taxes for healthcare that is both better and cheaper to run than in other countries.
Often the government will negotiate the prices of medicines or treatments with the companies developing these treatments, and because of this it can bring the cost down.
But the system is creaking at the seams. It can take weeks in Finland to get a doctor's appointment, not for the wealthiest who can always turn to private care, or for those who live here in the capital, Helsinki, but for the poorest and those who live in the most remote parts of the country. It is for them, say analysts, that the system needs to be fixed.
It's a really urgent matter. If we're not going to be able to deliver on this reform, or we're going to have even more unequal system.
So change Finland must, with few Finns seeing their 130-year-old system as a model for any country looking to change its own. Melissa Bell, CNN, Helsinki.